Well, now that we got the bottom of our boat figured out, we need to build the walls. Otherwise, you can't float without walls. For this simple boat, we got our flat bottom, and we're going to build straight-sided walls. I don't know how you calculated your draft to be. Definitely use the ARC calculator to figure out what the area of this is. Divide that, you've got your displacement, you know how much you need to displace. You should know what the area of this bottom of your boat is now. Then all you need to do is divide out that last bit to figure out how high your walls need to be, add a safety factor, and there you go. So all we're going to do here for walls is simply cut strips. Now, of course, we don't have a full 12-foot strip, and we need to make sure that our grain runs this way, always along the long axis of the boat. So we're running our grain this way. I have to use 3 pieces because my biggest structural piece is limited to 48 inches. This boat's about 140. This here is exactly going to be 12 feet. I've got my gaps here. Well, that creates the same problem we had with our bottom. So we're going to build an identical wall behind it. But let's go ahead and take care of this first. So we'll put our construction adhesive inside here in these corrugations, lay this down on a garage floor somewhere flat, weigh it down, and especially right over here, put heavy books or something to keep this nice and flat while that construction adhesive dries. Once it dries, you'll have something that'll bend. Don't try to pull on it too hard. It shouldn't come apart because construction adhesive is really good. Lay this, of course, well, you're not going to stand it up. You've got this on a flat surface. Now, we're going to take one of these pieces, and you're just going to lay it right along here. Butt it up right against the edge, such that it looks like this. Here's your cardboard, all 3 layers. The side piece comes down over all 3, like this. Okay? Now I didn't draw it flush, but it is flush, so that every one of these pieces touches the floor. Do another one of these, cut it out, lay it up there, make sure your length is right. If for some reason one of these ends up longer or shorter, it's much easier to simply lengthen the side just a wee bit. Now that's going to add an extra seam, but with enough construction adhesive and everything, that's not too big a deal. But if you did the math and everything right the first time, this should easily match up with this. If your side piece is too long, which it really should be, it's best to design your side pieces an inch or 2 longer than whatever arc length you think you need. So I always do that. Add an extra inch minimum. That way, all you got to do then, once you figure this out, is chop off a straight. What you certainly don't want to do is trying to retrim the curve here on your boat, because you're going to have to just start over. So you've got your 2 side pieces here laid out. Go ahead now and glue them on. The best way to do this here is you need to use construction adhesive anytime that there's going to be water contact on your seam. This is a potential leak point. We didn't put construction adhesive between these plies here because there's not supposed to be any water touching there ever. So we're going to run construction adhesive along the edge here, inside the corrugations of our sandwich. Then we're going to butt this up there to it. You can put a bunch of, I used 5-gallon barrels. You can put books, just something out here. I just weighed down the boat and then put a bunch of things heavy on the backside to, shove it all together. Once that dried, I did the same thing to the other side. So you've got glue here, you've got glue here, and you've got glue all along there. Okay, what we're going to do now is beef up our wall a little bit because it's only 1 layer thick, and that's not enough to resist the outward water pressure at this point. So what we're going to do now is put the wall on the inside of the one we just made. So you'll need to measure whatever distance you have from the top here to the top of your piece. You certainly don't want this inner piece sticking up. So measure that, cut your strips that tall, then lay them on the inside. In order to glue this properly, you need to make sure that you offset your seams such that your inner wall is staggered at least 6 inches from this. You don't have to put it right in the middle if you don't want to, but just make sure that you stagger this inner wall at least 6 inches so that there's enough overlap to prevent any water trying to zigzag through the gaps. So do that. You can use just a stippling tight bond pattern to hold these together. We'll almost never use construction adhesive to make direct contact sandwich panels. Construction adhesive is only used for watertight seams because it's really thick and it doesn't like to spread out well. So we'll use our stipple pattern on the tight bond. We'll put this new wall inside. You know, put your heavy stuff inside the boat, heavy stuff outside the boat, maybe a couple spring clamps just to hold those two walls together while that dries. But we're going to need to probably add a couple bulkheads because it's still going to want to buckle. There's nothing at the top here to keep everything in place. So we're going to talk about that for a second.